The massive space station called Olympus Prime floated in neutral territory, far from any planet or star system. Today, it hosted the Grand Galactic Technology Summit, where the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy came to show off their newest weapons and ships. The station's main hall was enormous, with transparent walls that showed the darkness of space and distant stars. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species filled the seats, all waiting to see what marvels would be presented. The Valorian Empire went first, as they always did. They controlled nearly half of known space, and had ruled for over 1,000 years. Their supreme commander, a tall creature named Vexcor, with 4 arms and scales that shimmered like metal, stood at the center of the presentation platform. Behind him, holographic displays showed their newest creation, a warship so large it could destroy entire moons with a single shot. The audience gasped and applauded. Other species presented their technologies too. The Kryn Collective showed energy shields that could stop almost any weapon. The Draxian Confederacy displayed fighters that could travel faster than anything else in the galaxy. Each presentation was met with cheers and admiration. Then came Earth's turn. The hall fell quiet, but not from respect. Beings throughout the audience started whispering and laughing. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago. They were seen as primitives, barely worthy of membership. Their planet was small, their territory tiny, and their technology laughable compared to the great empires. Taiyang walked onto the platform with 2 colleagues, Minji and Jiwan. All 3 wore simple blue uniforms with Earth's symbol on the shoulder. Taiyang was a thin man with dark hair, starting to gray at the temples. He carried a small metal case in his hands. The laughter grew louder when the audience saw how small it was. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, Taiyang began, his voice steady despite the mockery. Earth presents the Atlas Protocol. He opened the case. Inside, resting on soft padding, was a silver sphere about the size of a melon. That was it. No holographic displays, no massive warship, no spectacular energy effects. Just a simple metal ball. The laughter became deafening. Vex single quotes, KOR, stood up, his 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of contempt. This is what humanity brings to the summit? A toy? A ball that children play with? His voice boomed through the hall, and his words were translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. Other voices joined in. A representative from the Kryn Collective called it primitive molecular manipulation, something their ancestors had abandoned centuries ago as useless. A Draxian general suggested that Earth should send their children next time, as they might bring better toys. Taiyang waited for the noise to die down. Minji and Jiwan stood beside him, their faces calm, but their hands clenched into fists. When the hall finally grew quiet again, Taiyang spoke. This sphere contains self-replicating nanites powered by zero-point energy. They have adaptive learning capabilities and can work together to accomplish complex tasks. I would like to request permission to demonstrate its capabilities. More laughter. Vexcor walked down from his seat to stand directly in front of Taiyang. The Valorian commander towered over the human, nearly twice his height. A demonstration? Vexcor's voice dripped with amusement. Very well. I have an old frigate in the testing zone nearby. It was decommissioned last year, but still has full armor plating. Show us what your little ball can do against a real warship. He paused, then his eyes glinted with malice. In fact, let us make this interesting. A wager. The hall went completely silent. Everyone knew what was coming. If your prototype can destroy my frigate, Vexcor continued, Valoria will grant Earth the Kepler mining system we have been disputing. Full rights, no conditions. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. But when it fails, Earth will withdraw from the Galactic Council for 50 standard years. You will return to your little corner of space and stop wasting our time with your primitive technology." The other delegates murmured their approval. This was entertainment now. They would watch humanity fail spectacularly and be rid of these annoying newcomers for decades. Tai Yang looked at Minji, then at Jiwan. Both nodded slightly. He turned back to Vexcor and extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. "We accept your terms." They shook hands, though Vexcor's single hand engulfed Tai Yang's completely. The Valorian commander was already imagining his victory speech. The entire Summit moved to the observation deck, a massive room with floor-to-ceiling windows that gave a perfect view of the testing zone. In the distance, the decommissioned Valorian frigate hung in space. It was 500 meters long, covered in armor plating designed to withstand sustained plasma bombardment. It looked dead and dark, but its structure was still intact and formidable. Tai Yang handed the metal case to Minji. She opened it and carefully removed the silver sphere. Her fingers moved across a small control pad built into the case. The sphere began to glow with a soft blue light. "Releasing Atlas Protocol," she said quietly. The sphere floated out of her hands, propelled by its own internal systems. It drifted toward the airlock, moving slowly and steadily. The audience watched through the windows as the small silver ball emerged into open space and began traveling toward the massive frigate. "How long do you think before it bounces off the hull?" Someone in the audience joked. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Vexcor stood at the front of the observation deck, his arms crossed, a satisfied smile on his face. He had already prepared his speech about how humanity needed to know their place in the galaxy. Beside him, his tactical advisor Schindel was recording everything to share with the Empire. The silver sphere reached the frigate and made contact with the hull. For 30 seconds, absolutely nothing visible happened. The sphere just sat there, a tiny dot of silver against the dark metal of the warship. "Is that it?" Vexcor called out. "Should we applaud now?" But Tai Yang wasn't paying attention to the mockery. He was watching the sensor readings on a small device in his hand. Minji and Jaiwan stood on either side of him, also watching their equipment. All three humans had slight smiles on their faces now. "Beginning exponential growth phase," Jiwan said softly. The frigate's running lights flickered once, then twice. Then they went completely dark. The laughter in the observation deck began to fade. Warning alarms began blaring across the observation deck. Sensor displays lit up with alerts as the monitoring systems detected something unusual happening to the frigate. The massive warship, which had been sitting dormant in space moments ago, was now completely dark. Every light, every indicator, every system had gone offline. Vexcor stepped closer to the window, his smile fading. "What is happening?" He demanded. TAEYANG remained calm. "The nanites are replicating. Each one can create copies of itself using available matter. They work together, sharing information instantly. 1 becomes 2. 2 becomes 4. 4 becomes 8. The growth is exponential." The sensors showed something spreading across the frigate's hull like frost on a window. But it wasn't frost. It was billions of microscopic machines, each one smaller than a grain of sand, working in perfect coordination. They were breaking down the ship's armor, plating at the molecular level, converting it into raw materials, and using those materials to create more nanites. 2 minutes had passed since contact. The silver color had spread across 10% of the hull. The audience wasn't laughing anymore. They pressed against the windows, staring in disbelief. Some species had developed nanotechnology before, but nothing like this. Nothing that worked so fast or so efficiently. "Make it stop," Vexcor said. His voice had lost its mocking tone. "Not yet," Tai Yang replied. "You wanted a demonstration. Let me show you what humanity has created." 5 minutes. Half the frigate was now covered in the silver coating. The nanites weren't just consuming the ship randomly. They were working with purpose, precision, and intelligence. They mapped every system, every circuit, every weapon. They learned how the ship was built, how it functioned, and how it could be improved. Minji checked her readings. Integration complete. Beginning reconstruction phase. 8 minutes. The entire frigate was now invisible beneath a swirling cloud of silver particles. The cloud moved like liquid, flowing and reshaping itself. The audience watched in stunned silence as the cloud began to condense and reform. 10 minutes after first contact, the frigate reappeared. But it wasn't the same ship anymore. The new vessel gleamed like polished silver. Its shape was similar to the original, but sleeker, more efficient. Weapon ports had been optimized. Armor plating was denser. Energy conduits were rerouted for better power distribution. The nanites had studied the Valorian design and improved it. G1 spoke into a communicator. Atlas, activate systems. The reconstructed frigate powered up. Its engines glowed blue instead of red. Lights came on across the hull, brighter than before. Shield generators activated, creating an energy barrier that sensors confirmed was 40% stronger than the original specifications. Impossible, Schindel whispered. That ship was built over 18 months in our finest shipyard. They rebuilt it in minutes. But the demonstration wasn't finished. On Taiyang's signal, the frigate's weapon systems activated. Plasma cannons extended from the hull, targeting systems came online, and missile bays opened. Every weapon was functional. Every system was operational. The ship was ready for combat. Then it began to change again. The silver vessel dissolved back into a cloud of nanites. This time, instead of reforming into one large ship, the cloud split apart. It created 5 smaller attack craft, each one perfectly designed for speed and maneuverability. They flew in formation, demonstrating coordination that would normally require living pilots. The audience gasped. A few delegates actually stepped back from the windows, fear replacing their earlier amusement. The attack craft merged back into a single cloud, then reformed into something completely different. The nanites created a defensive formation, spreading out into a wide lattice pattern. Each individual section connected to its neighbors, forming a massive shield wall that stretched for hundreds of meters. Final demonstration, Taiyang announced. He nodded to Minji. She activated a weapon built into the observation deck, a low-power plasma cannon used for testing. It fired a bright blue bolt at the nanite formation. The audience held its breath. The bolt hit the lattice and simply vanished. The nanites absorbed the energy, distributed it harmlessly across the entire formation, and continued hovering in space as if nothing had happened. Sensors showed they had analyzed the weapon's energy signature, identified its wavelength and power output, and developed optimal countermeasures in less than 2 seconds. Silence filled the observation deck. No one spoke. No one moved. Vexcor's face had gone pale beneath his scales. He understood the implications immediately. A weapon that could learn, adapt, and replicate exponentially could defeat any conventional fleet. Numbers meant nothing if each destroyed ship just provided raw materials for more nanites. Armor meant nothing if it could be consumed and converted. Even superior technology meant nothing if the nanites could study and improve it. Shut it down, Vexcor said quietly. Shut it down now. Taiyang gave a command, and the nanite formation condensed. The billions of microscopic machines flew back toward Olympus Prime, flowing through the airlock and returning to Minji's outstretched hand. They compressed themselves back into a simple silver sphere that looked no different than when the demonstration started. Minji placed it carefully back into the metal case and closed the lid. The observation deck remained silent for nearly a minute. Then, slowly, beings from different species began to react. Some applauded, recognizing the brilliance of what they had seen. Others whispered urgently into communicators, reporting back to their governments. A few looked terrified. Vexcor turned to face Taiyang. His forearms hung at his sides, and his expression was unreadable. "You have violated weapons limitation treaties," he said. "This technology is too dangerous to exist. I will bring this matter before the full council and demand sanctions against Earth." "We have violated nothing," Taiyang replied calmly. "The treaties restrict weapons of mass destruction designed to kill civilian populations. Atlas Protocol is a precision tool. It caused no casualties today. It could have consumed this entire station and everyone on it, but we chose not to. That should tell you something about humanity's intentions." Vexcor said nothing. He simply turned and walked away, his advisor following close behind. The other Valorian delegates went with them. Leaving quickly and quietly as the crowd began to disperse, several species approached the Earth delegation. A representative from a small civilization called the Pelthians expressed interest in technology sharing. A Draxian official, much friendlier than the general who had mocked them earlier, asked about possible defense contracts. Even a Kryn diplomat, whose people had called the technology primitive, requested a private meeting. Jiwan smiled slightly. "We just made a lot of new friends." "And a very dangerous enemy," Minji added, watching Vexcor disappear down a corridor. Taiyang nodded. "I know, but it was necessary. For too long, the galaxy has seen humanity as weak, as primitive, as something to be dismissed and ignored. They needed to know that we are not defenseless, that we will not be pushed around." "What happens now?" Jiwan asked. "Now," Taiyang said, picking up the metal case, "we prepare. Because Vexcor isn't going to the council to file a complaint. He's going to convince his emperor that Earth is a threat that must be eliminated before we can deploy this technology widely." Minji frowned. "You think he'll attack?" "I know he will," Taiyang replied. "We just humiliated the Valorian Empire in front of the entire galaxy. They won't accept that. They'll come for us, and they'll come soon." "Then we'd better be ready," Jiwan said. The three humans left the observation deck, carrying their small metal case. Behind them, through the massive windows, space looked peaceful and calm. But all three knew that calm wouldn't last long. They had shown the galaxy that humanity could defend itself. Now they would have to prove it. 2 weeks after the demonstration at Olympus Prime, the Valorian Empire held an emergency meeting on their capital world. The chamber was ancient, built from black stone that had witnessed 1,000 years of conquest and domination. Emperor Thraxfer sat on his throne, a massive seat carved from a single piece of obsidian. Around him stood the High Command, the most powerful military leaders in Valorian space. Vexcor stood at the center of the chamber, presenting his analysis. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing calculations and projections. "The Atlas Protocol is an extinction-level threat," he said, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "If humanity mass-produces this technology, no conventional fleet can stand against it. One sphere becomes 1,000,000. 1,000,000 becomes 1,000,000,000. The growth is exponential and unstoppable." A general named Krathvan spoke up. "Surely their production capacity is limited. They're a young species with only one star system." "It doesn't matter," Vexcor replied. "Give them 1 year, and they could have defense platforms throughout their territory. Give them 5 years, and they could challenge any empire. Give them 10 years, and they could conquer the galaxy." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We must strike now, before they can deploy this technology on a meaningful scale." Emperor Thraxfer leaned forward. His scales were darker than Vexcor's, almost black, and his eyes gleamed with cold intelligence. "What do you propose?" "An ultimatum," Vexcor said. We demand they surrender all Atlas Protocol technology and research. They must submit to our oversight of their weapons development. They must cede the disputed mining systems to Valorian control. We give them 72 hours to comply. And when they refuse? The Emperor asked. Then we crush them, Vexcor replied. We send 300 warships to Sol System. We destroy their space stations and orbital defenses. We leave their planet intact, but eliminate their ability to threaten us. The galaxy will see that Valorian power is still absolute. The Emperor smiled. Make it so. On Earth, President Hyen sat in an emergency cabinet meeting. The room was deep underground, shielded from any possible attack. Around the table sat military leaders, scientists, and advisors. Taiyang, Minji, and Jiwan were there as well, sitting near Admiral Yuna, the head of Earth's space forces. The Valorian ultimatum arrived 1 hour ago, the president said. They want the Atlas Protocol, submission to their authority and territory. We have 72 hours to respond. A defense minister named Kang spoke up. We should comply. The Valorian Empire controls half the galaxy. Their fleet could destroy everything we've built in space. We can't fight them. If we submit now, we'll never be free, Admiral Yuna countered. They'll control our research, our military, our future. We'll be servants forever. Better servants than dead, Kang argued. All eyes turned to Taiyang. He had been quiet, sitting with his hands folded on the table. Finally, he spoke. The sphere we demonstrated at the summit was operating at 1/1,000,000th of its potential capacity. We built in restriction protocols to prevent accidents. The actual Atlas protocol, the full version, is much more powerful. The room went silent. President Hyen leaned forward. Explain. Minji opened a laptop and projected images onto the wall screen. We've been preparing for this possibility since before the summit. Throughout the Sol System, in the asteroid belt, we've hidden manufacturing stations. They've been using asteroid material to replicate nanites for the past 6 months. We currently have approximately 3,000 ready-to-deploy units. 3,000 spheres? Admiral Yuna asked. 3,000 asteroids, Jiwan corrected. Each one hollowed out and filled with billions of nanites. They're dormant right now, waiting for activation. The Valorians don't know they exist. President Hyen stood and walked to the window, looking out at the underground facility's artificial garden. If we activate them, if we use them against the Valorian fleet, we'll be starting a war. They're already bringing war to us, Taiyang said quietly. The question is whether we defend ourselves or surrender. I can't make that choice for Earth, but I can tell you that if we submit now, every other aggressive empire in the galaxy will see us as weak. We'll be targeted again and again. Peace through surrender is just slow death. The cabinet debated for hours. Some argued for compliance, believing survival was more important than pride. Others insisted that freedom was worth fighting for. Finally, President Hyen called for a vote. It was close, but the decision was made that Earth would reject the ultimatum. The message was sent to Valoria exactly 72 hours after the ultimatum was received. It was short and simple. Earth declines your demands. We seek peace, but we will defend ourselves if attacked. The Valorian response was immediate. 300 warships entered hyperspace, heading for Sol System. Vexcor commanded the fleet personally from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Infinite Conquest. The journey would take 3 days. On the second day, long-range sensors detected the approaching fleet. Admiral Yuna ordered all Earth forces to fall back to Mars orbit. The conventional fleet wasn't large, maybe 40 ships total, and they were no match for the Valorians. The order to retreat was part of the plan. Vexcor saw the retreat and smiled. They're running, he told Shindle. Just as I predicted. They have courage enough to refuse us, but not to face us in battle. The Valorian fleet entered Sol System on schedule. They bypassed Mercury and Venus, heading straight for Earth. Vigskor broadcast a message on all channels, ensuring everyone on Earth could hear him. People of Earth, your leaders have made a foolish choice. They value pride over your lives. I offer one final chance for surrender. Give us the Atlas Protocol, and we will leave your planet intact. Refuse, and we will destroy every station, every satellite, every ship you possess. You have 1 hour. On Luna, in a hidden command center built into a crater on the far side of the moon, Taiyang sat before a control console. Minji and Jiwan were with him, along with a small team of technicians. They watched the Valorian fleet approach on their screens. They're not slowing down, Minji observed. They don't think they need to, Taiyang replied. They see our fleet retreating. They think we're defeated already. Jiwan checked the chronometer. 58 minutes until their deadline. Do we wait? Taiyang thought about all the work that had gone into this moment. The years of research. The secret construction in the asteroid belt. The careful planning. And he thought about what would happen if they did nothing. Earth would become a subject world, its people living under Valorian rule, its potential forever limited by fear. No, he said. We don't wait. Admiral Yuna, are your forces in position? On the command screen, Admiral Yuna's face appeared. She was on the bridge of Earth's flagship, currently hiding behind Mars. We're ready. All personnel are briefed. All ships are prepared for rapid redeployment. Good, Taiyang said. He took a deep breath and entered a command code into his console. Activating Atlas Prime, full protocol authorization. Defensive parameters only until further notice. In the asteroid belt, 3,000 unremarkable asteroids began to glow with silver light. The Valorian fleet maintained its formation as it advanced through Sol System. Vigskor stood on the bridge of the infinite conquest, confident and eager. Around him, officers monitored various systems and coordinated the massive fleet. 300 warships moved together like a school of predatory fish, weapons armed and shields raised. Sir, detecting unusual energy signatures from the asteroid belt, a sensor officer reported. Vigskor barely glanced at the display. Probably mining equipment or sensor ghosts. Ignore it. Keep all weapons focused on Earth's orbital stations. The sensor officer hesitated. Sir, the signatures are increasing. We're detecting thousands of individual sources now. I said ignore it, Vigskor snapped. Our target is Earth's military infrastructure, not rocks and ice. He made a fatal mistake. He assumed that anything important would be obvious, visible, announced. He couldn't imagine that humanity would hide its most powerful weapons in plain sight, disguised as ordinary asteroids. The 3,000 asteroids cracked open simultaneously. Each one broke apart like an egg hatching, revealing the swirling clouds of nanites inside. For 6 months, these nanites had been replicating, using the mineral-rich asteroid material as raw resources. Each asteroid now contained billions upon billions of individual units, all connected through quantum-entangled communication, all working as one distributed intelligence. The clouds emerged and accelerated toward the Valorian fleet at speeds that conventional ships couldn't match. They didn't need engines or fuel. Each nanite could generate its own propulsion, and together they moved like a living thing. Sir, the sensor officer shouted. Multiple contacts approaching at high speed. Thousands of them. Vigskor finally looked at the sensor display. His eyes widened. The screen showed 3,000 silver clouds, each 1 kilometers across, moving in perfect coordination toward his fleet. Battle stations. All ships, full weapons release. Fire everything. The Valorian fleet unleashed devastating firepower. Plasma cannons lit up space with bright blue streams of superheated gas. Antimatter missiles streaked toward the approaching swarms. Graviton beams, weapons that could tear apart asteroids by manipulating gravity itself, focused on the largest concentrations of NANITE. The nanite swarms didn't dodge. They flew straight into the weapon's fire. Plasma bolts struck the first swarm, burning through millions of individual nanites. But the swarm didn't slow down. It absorbed the energy, analyzed it, and shared the information with every other swarm through quantum communication. By the time the second volley of plasma fire reached them, the nanites had adapted. They formed heat-resistant structures, distributing the thermal energy harmlessly across the entire formation. Antimatter missiles detonated inside the swarms, creating explosions that should have vaporized everything nearby. Instead, the nanites formed temporary containment matrices, channeling the destructive force into space while sacrificing only a small percentage of their numbers. Each explosion was analyzed, studied, and countered more effectively the next time. The graviton beams tore apart the nanite formations, scattering them across thousands of kilometers. But the swarms simply reformed, the individual units finding each other and reconnecting as if nothing had happened. "They're adapting," Schindel shouted. "Every weapon we use, they learn how to counter it." Vexcor watched in growing horror as his fleet's attacks became less and less effective. The nanite swarms were not just defending themselves. They were learning military tactics from the Valorians' own assault patterns. They studied the fleet's formation, identified weak points, and began coordinating their attacks with precision that matched the best military strategists. The first swarm reached the Vanguard ships. It enveloped a destroyer completely, covering it like a silver blanket. The crew inside watched through the viewports as their hull began to dissolve. Warning alarms blared as the nanites broke through outer armor, then inner bulkheads, then reached the ship's vital systems. "Abandon ship," the captain ordered. The crew raced for escape pods, but it was too late. The nanites had already infiltrated the life support systems, the power core, the propulsion drives. They shut everything down without destroying it, learning every detail of the ship's construction as they worked. Within 5 minutes, the destroyer was completely disabled. The nanites moved to the next ship. From his command center on Luna, Taiyang watched the battle unfold. Multiple screens showed different views of the engagement. He saw Valorian ships firing desperately, saw the nanite swarms advancing relentlessly, saw the careful coordination of the attack. "They're trying to self-destruct," Minji reported, monitoring Valorian communications. Vexcor ordered his crews to destroy their own ships rather than let us capture them. "Are the nanites preventing it?" Taiyang asked. Dachi. One nodded. "Yes, any swarm that reaches a ship infiltrates its systems within minutes. They disable self-destruct mechanisms first, then weapons, then propulsion. The crews are trapped inside their own vessels." Taiyang activated the communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Valorian forces, this is Taiyang of Earth. I offer you surrender terms. Power down all weapons systems. Submit to temporary monitoring to prevent further aggression. Withdraw from Sol system. Any ship that complies will be completely unharmed. You have my word." On the Infinite Conquest, Vexcor heard the transmission and roared in rage. "Never. I will not surrender to primitives. All ships continue firing. Fight until your last breath." But his crews were watching their sister ships being disabled one by one. They saw that resistance was futile. The nanites were too fast, too adaptive, too numerous. Some captains, unwilling to die for pride, began powering down their weapons despite Vexcor's orders. "Supreme Commander," Schindel said quietly, "we've lost 70 ships already. and nanets are still advancing. Perhaps we should consider? No. Vexcor slammed his fist on the console. I would rather die than submit to these creatures. A silver swarm approached the infinite conquest. Vexcor ordered maximum firepower, and his flagship's weapons unleashed everything they had. For a moment, it seemed to work. The swarm scattered, broken apart by the intense bombardment. Then microscopic gaps appeared in the flagship's hull, so small that sensors barely detected them. The nanets had found weak points in the armor, tiny manufacturing imperfections that existed in every ship. They flowed through like water through cracks, entering the vessel itself. Hull breach. Someone shouted. They're inside. Vexcor ran to the bridge entrance and sealed the door. But sealing doors meant nothing to beings that could squeeze through molecular gaps. The nanets infiltrated every system simultaneously. Within 3 minutes, the infinite conquest went. Across the fleet, the same scenario played out. Of the 300 warships that had entered Sol system, 240 were now disabled and contained, their crews unharmed but powerless. The remaining 60 ships, following Vexcor's fanatical orders, attempted a suicide run directly at Earth. Stop them, Taiyang ordered quietly. The nanet swarms intercepted the charging ships. This time, containment wasn't possible. The ships were moving too fast, and their crews were too determined to die. The swarms made a different choice. They disassembled the vessels completely, breaking them down to component atoms in seconds. But even as they destroyed the ships, other nanets teleported the crews into escape pods that were gently deposited in Mars orbit. 4 hours after entering Sol system, the Valorian fleet was defeated. Not one Earthship had fired a shot. Not one human soldier had engaged in combat. The nanets had done everything. Admiral Yuna contacted the Galactic Council, broadcasting footage of the entire engagement. Her message was clear and direct. Earth possesses the capability to destroy any conventional fleet. We choose restraint. We could have killed every Valorian who came here. Instead, we disabled their ships and saved their lives. Remember this when you question humanity's intentions. On his darkened bridge, trapped inside his own flagship, Vexcor sat in silence. Everything he had believed about Valorian superiority, about human weakness, about the natural order of the galaxy, had been shattered in 4 hours. His empire's 1,000-year reign of dominance was over, destroyed by a species he had mocked 2 weeks ago. Taiyang's voice came through the communication system one final time. Supreme Commander Vexcor, you came to our home to destroy us because we refused to submit. You brought 300 warships to terrorize a planet that only wanted to be left alone. Now you see what we chose not to show at the summit. Earth wants peace, but we will never bow to threats. Take this message back to your Emperor. The news of the Valorian defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species, every civilization, every government heard the same impossible story. Earth, a newcomer to galactic politics, had neutralized 300 Valorian warships in less than 4 hours without losing a single vessel of their own. Got the captured Valorian fleet, floated in Mars orbit for 2 weeks while Earth and Valoria negotiated. Emperor Thraxter wanted his ships back. Earth agreed, but with conditions. Every weapon system was permanently disabled. Small monitoring nanet clusters were embedded in each ship's core systems, impossible to remove without destroying the vessel. These clusters would report any attempt to rearm or modify the ships for military use. The Emperor had no choice but to accept. The alternative was losing 300 ships permanently, along with their crews. When the fleet finally returned to Valorian space, the sight of disabled warships limping home sparked outrage across the Empire. Military commanders blamed Vexcor for the catastrophic defeat. Civilian leaders questioned why they had attacked Earth in the first place. The Emperor's authority, built on 1,000 years of unchallenged military dominance, began to crumble. Within 3 weeks, rebellions erupted in the outer territories. Species that had been conquered centuries ago saw Earth's victory as proof that Valorian power was not absolute. If humanity could resist, so could they. Entire star systems declared independence. Regional governors refused orders from the capital. The empire that had controlled half the galaxy began to fragment. Emperor Thraxper tried to hold everything together, but it was too late. His high command fractured into competing factions. Some wanted to rebuild and strike at Earth again. Others demanded his abdication for leading them into disaster. The empire that had seemed eternal was tearing itself apart. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Every member species attended, even those that rarely participated. The chamber buzzed with worried conversation. If the Valorian Empire could fall so quickly, what did that mean for galactic stability? President Haiyan attended personally, bringing Tai Yang, Minji, and Ji-Wan with her. The 4 humans walked into the chamber to absolute silence. Every being present stared at them with a mixture of fear, respect, and uncertainty. The council speaker, an ancient being from a neutral species, addressed them directly. Earth has demonstrated power that threatens the balance of our civilization. Many members fear what humanity might do with such capabilities. Some have proposed sanctions. Others suggest quarantine. We ask you directly, what are Earth's intentions? President Haiyan stood to respond, but Tai Yang touched her arm gently. She nodded and sat back down. This was a moment for the creator of the Atlas Protocol to speak. Tai Yang walked to the center of the chamber. He looked around at the thousands of beings watching him. Some were terrified. Some were hostile. A few looked hopeful. Members of the Galactic Council, he began. Humanity learned a difficult lesson in our own history, long before we reached the stars. We learned that unchecked power corrupts. That absolute power corrupts absolutely. We've fought wars over this. We've nearly destroyed ourselves because of it. He paused, letting his words sink in. The Atlas Protocol is powerful enough to conquer the galaxy. We know this. You know this. That's precisely why it must never be used for conquest. We created it to defend ourselves, not to dominate others. A delegate from the Draxian Confederacy spoke up. Fine words. But how can we trust them? How do we know you won't change your minds once you have fleets of these weapons deployed? You're right not to trust words alone, Tai Yang replied. So I offer something more concrete. Earth will establish a mutual defense network available to any species threatened by aggression. If you're attacked, we'll help defend you. But joining this network requires accepting oversight. You must submit to inspections to prove you're not developing weapons to attack your neighbors. You must agree to peaceful resolution of disputes before military action. The chamber erupted in conversation. Some species were interested immediately. Others were suspicious. You're asking us to submit to human authority, a Kryn representative said. No, Tai Yang corrected. I'm asking you to submit to a system of mutual accountability. Earth will follow the same rules. We'll open our research facilities to inspection just like everyone else. The oversight won't be controlled by any one species. It will be managed by a council drawn from all member civilizations. Over the next 3 days, the proposal was debated, modified, and refined. In the end, 47 species agreed to join the network. Not everyone trusted it, and some powerful civilizations refused to participate. But it was a start. Earth was offered a permanent seat on the Council Security Board with veto power, a position previously reserved for only 3 founding civilizations. President Haiyan accepted on behalf of humanity. Minji spent the following months working with allied species to integrate their systems With the defensive network, she discovered something interesting. Several civilizations had technologies that complemented the Atlas protocol. The Pelvians had developed quantum prediction algorithms that could anticipate attacks before they happened. The Draxians had shield harmonization, techniques that made defensive barriers more efficient. When combined with Earth's nanotechnology, these innovations created something greater than any single species could have built alone. Humanity's approach wasn't superior to everyone else's. It was simply different. Seeing problems from angles shaped by Earth's unique history and diversity. G1 led a diplomatic mission to the fragmenting Valorian territories. Instead of exploiting their weakness, Earth offered help. Medical supplies for war-torn regions, technology sharing to rebuild damaged infrastructure, advisors to help establish new governments for species seeking independence. Many Valorians were shocked by this approach. They had expected vengeance or demands for tribute. Instead, humanity offered assistance. The gesture won Earth unexpected allies among former Valorian subjects who realized that Earth's restraint during the battle hadn't been weakness. It had been a deliberate choice of principle over power. Not all Valorians appreciated the help. Some still blamed humanity for their empire's collapse, but others, particularly younger generations, saw Earth's example as a better path forward. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Vexcor made an unexpected appearance. He had been stripped of all rank and exiled from Valorian space. He arrived at Earth on a small civilian transport, requesting a private meeting with Tai Yang. They met in a simple conference room at the Lunar Command Center. Vexcor looked different without his military uniform. Smaller somehow, older. "I came to ask you a question," Vexcor said. "How did you do it? My species has been building warships for 1,000 years. We conquered half the galaxy. How did primitives from a single world develop something we never imagined?" Tai Yang poured tea for both of them, a human gesture of hospitality. "We weren't smarter than you. We were desperate. We'd been losing colonists to hostile environments, pirate attacks, natural disasters. We needed defense systems that could protect isolated settlements without requiring massive military infrastructure. We needed something adaptive and self-sufficient. But the design itself," Vexcor pressed, "the way the nanites work together, the quantum communication, the learning algorithms, how did you conceive of it?" "Diversity," Tai Yang answered simply. "The team that developed the Atlas protocol included scientists from dozens of different cultures, each with different ways of thinking. Someone raised in Korea sees problems differently than someone raised in Brazil or Nigeria or Sweden. We approach engineering from different philosophical foundations. When you combine all those perspectives, you find solutions that homogeneous groups miss." Vexcor was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "The Valorian Empire only allowed our own species in positions of power. We saw diversity as weakness. You're telling me it was our greatest blind spot." "One of them," Tai Yang agreed. "The other was assuming that military might equal superiority, that conquest equals progress. We learned differently on Earth. Our greatest achievements came through cooperation, not domination." The former Supreme Commander stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. "I still don't like humans. You destroyed everything I believed in. But I respect you. That's more than I've given anyone in a very long time." 5 years after the Battle of Sol, the galaxy had transformed. The Galactic Council was no longer a hierarchy of powerful empires dominating weaker species. It had become something closer to a true federation. The Atlas Defense Network protected 67 member civilizations. Wars hadn't ended completely, but they were less common. Most disputes were resolved through negotiation rather than violence. Humanity hadn't become the new dominant empire. Instead, they had become mediators, innovators, and defenders of a more balanced galactic order. Earth's technology was shared with allies, not hoarded. Earth's military protected others, not conquered them. Tai Yang, now semi-retired, returned to Olympus Prime Station. The same hall where humanity had been mocked 5 years ago now hosted a different kind of gathering. Young scientists and engineers from across the galaxy came to learn, to share ideas, to collaborate on new projects. He gave lectures sometimes, talking about the development of the Atlas Protocol and the principles behind it. But his favorite topic was something simpler: the importance of diversity, cooperation, and choosing wisdom over power. After one lecture, a young student from a small civilization asked him a question. "They say Earth could conquer the galaxy if you wanted to. Why don't you?" Tai Yang smiled. "Because conquest is easy. Any species with enough weapons can dominate others through fear. The hard part is building something better, creating a civilization where different species work together as equals. That takes patience, humility, and the wisdom to know that your way isn't the only way. That's what humanity is trying to do." The original silver sphere from the demonstration at the summit was now housed in a museum on Olympus Prime, in an exhibit dedicated to galactic peace. Millions of beings visited it every year. A plaque beneath it read, "They mocked Earth's prototype until it shattered their entire empire. But Earth used that power not to build a new empire, but to ensure no empire could threaten the free peoples of the galaxy again." Late one evening, Tai Yang stood alone in the museum, looking at the sphere behind its protective barrier. Minji and Jiwan joined him, the three old friends standing together in comfortable silence. "Do you think it will last?" Minji asked. "The peace we've built? Nothing lasts forever," Tai Yang replied. "But we've given the galaxy something it didn't have before. A working example that strength doesn't have to mean domination. That power can be used to protect rather than conquer. Some civilizations will follow that example. Others won't, but at least now there's a choice." Jiwan smiled. "We proved them all wrong. Everyone who said humanity was too primitive, too weak, too insignificant to matter. No," Tai Yang said quietly. "We proved that those things were never what mattered. Intelligence, strength, technology, they're all tools. What matters is what you choose to do with them. Humanity had the wisdom to know when to reveal our power, the restraint to use it defensively, and the vision to share it rather than hoard it. That's what truly made us worthy of respect." They left the museum together. Three humans who had changed the galaxy not through conquest, but through the most difficult demonstration of all: power tempered by principle, strength guided by wisdom, and the courage to show that there was a better way.